All right, so I've got all my panels cut. The next thing I need to do is I need to make these little square or basically rectangular little slides that the bottles are going to sit on inside of this wine rack. But before I do that, I want to make sure that I don't forget to put pocket holes in my panels where I need them, because once this thing starts coming together, it's going to be a really tight fit inside to get the top put together and to get that center divider screwed into the back. So what you're going to want to do is we're going to take the back. Okay, this is your back. This is only a 14 bottle wine rack, so it's going to be two rows of wine bottles here. So the first thing I want to do is I want to make sure that I've got 2 pocket holes here in the top that will allow me to attach the top at the back when the time comes. Okay, so this is going to be the inside of the back of the wine cabinet. Next, you should have 3 panels, 2 of which are going to be the same width, and then you'll have one that's just a tad bit shorter, about 3/4 of an inch shorter. Okay, and that is going to be your middle divider. So your middle divider, we're going to need pocket holes in the back, and we're also going to need pocket holes in the top. As far as the bottom, we'll come up through the bottom to attach that instead of trying to run pocket holes on the inside. So I'm just going to put a few pocket holes in here. Now on this middle center divider here, we are going to need pocket holes in the back that hold this to the back of the carcass, but I'm not going to do that now because I don't know exactly my spacing yet on these rails. So as it happens, this 520 Kreg jig, pocket hole jig, actually fits right in between the slots where our wine bottles are going to go. So I'm going to use this one when the time comes. But there's the pocket holes to attach the top from the center divider. And now all I need is some pocket holes at the top of the sides to attach the top when the time comes. And there's the other side. So what you should have is 2 sides with pocket holes at the top. You have your center divider, which has pocket holes at the top as well. This will also have pocket holes along one side on the interior to hold this to the back. And then you have your back, this skinny little back here, that'll have pocket holes at the top also to hold the top on. With that done, it's time to start making these little side rails. Now, what I use is just cutoffs. They're just drops from my shop that I accumulate over time. Whenever I clean up, I'll generally measure these and save the ones that are of a specific length. I cut them all down ahead of time to 11 3/4. So what I have is I have a whole lot of drops here in this little cubby. These are all cut to length already, and all I need to do is plane these down to exactly 1/2 inch, and then we're going to rip them to exactly 1/2 inch so that they're perfectly square, and then we can get to putting the rest of this together. All right, now if you don't have a pair of these calipers, then you can always kind of use the thickness of whatever you're planing as a guide upright on the table saw to get as close to that as possible. I do have some calipers. These are only like $10 on Amazon, so I'm going to use these, and we're going to plane down all these blanks that I have to 1/2 inch exactly. All right, now that I've got these down to basically half an inch, I'm going to rip these down to half an inch, the other dimension, so that I come up with a perfect square. And here at first, I'm just going to line this up on my table saw. I've got probably just a hair of room here, extra, so I'm not touching the blade because I'm gonna sneak up on this. All right, so I have all the rails cut for where the bottles are going to slide into. I'm going to need my pin nailer, and inside my pin nailer, I've got 1.25 inch Grex pin nails in here right now. I'm going to change these out basically for what is 1 inch pin nails. Okay, so the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to start with, and it's really good to have a nice flat piece of wood on this first one. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of these rails and I'm going to place it down here at the bottom, and that's going to be my initial spacing. This one's not going to get glued in. Okay, I am going to glue in the next one. All right, so I'm going to have just a tiny bit of space there, the space of one rail between the very bottom of this panel and the bottom of the unit. Okay, so what I want to do first is very, very little bit, tiny bit of glue. When I say a tiny bit, I do mean a tiny bit. A little goes a long way here, and you don't want to overdo it unless you really love sanding. Okay, because if this squeezes out and gets on the panel, staining this is going to be a bit of a nightmare. So I'm just going to go ahead and line that up. Make sure I'm flush in the back. I always make sure I'm flush on one side of this. I'm going to make it the back. And I'm going to pin nail there, pin nail there, and pin nail there. So now I've got this little space here at the bottom. Now I've got these basically spacers that I made. I made these, cut these out with my laser so they'd be exact. They are, let me find my calipers. Okay, so basically this spacer is, it's 3.3 inches on this spacer, all right, which is, as you know, just a little bit greater than 3.25. So I'm going to take this spacer, I'm going to go ahead and line up my second rail. Again, tiny bit of glue. I'm going to center this spacer here on the bottom rail that I just installed, and I'll put this next rail in, make sure we're flush at the back, because that's where I want to be flush. I can always clean up the front. I'm going to put a pin nail right in the center. I'll slide my spacer to the front, apply a little pressure, slide my spacer to the back, apply a little pressure. And there we go. There's one slot for a wine bottle. And I'm just going to continue this process all the way up. There's going to be, this is a 14 bottle holder or rack. So there are going to be a total of 7 rails here. So I'm just going to continue this until I have 7 rails installed here in this cabinet. Now, because this is the center divider, we're going to have bottles on both sides. So I'm going to go ahead and flip this over, and we're going to repeat this process on the other side. Go ahead and get my nice piece of flat wood here. Put in one as a spacer. Okay, so and now our center divider is done. All right, we have, or I have installed the rails on both sides. I'm going to set this aside to dry. We are not going to put the rails into the sides of the unit yet. We're going to put the carcass together first, and then we'll put the rails in. Okay. So if you're paying attention there, that was a free tip. I have a cheap little Wen drill press set up over here that it's only set up to cut countersink holes for assembly, which is a huge time saver if you're doing things in mass production, and it saves a lot of wear on your forearms and your wrists drilling those by hand. In addition, you can set up a block like I have that automatically sets it at 3/8 of an inch, so you're always right at the right distance from the edge of the panel. Okay, I'm going to attach one side to the back. Again, it is the back that's going to butt up against the side. So I'll just get this corner here perfected, and I'll drive a brad nail in there. I'll do the same at the bottom. And then almost always there's a bow or something in the ply. I'm going to fix that bow just manually here by pressing on it. And once that's kind of locked in, I can put in a few more brad nails to hold that together until we're ready to screw it. Remember, the pocket holes are going to go towards the top here. That's what we're going to use to attach the top. I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to perfect this corner. So brad. Okay, and there we have our carcass that is at least here held together for the moment by brad nails. Now you should have two other panels that we cut. One is going to be the top of this unit and one's going to be the bottom. The bottom of this unit just sits on there. It butts up to the bottom of the cabinet carcass just for ease here. And what I'm going to do is I know that this bottom is perfectly square because my saw is pretty much perfectly dialed in. So I'm going to use this to bend the box into square. But I'm going to go over to my drill press and drill some countersink holes first. Drilled, and to square up this cabinet, I know that the bottom panel is square. So I'm going to come back to this rear corner of the carcass, and I'm going to go ahead and tack this in with a brad nail. And then what I can do is I can just move around. I can move up to the front of this carcass, make sure everything gets aligned here perfectly. I'll set a brad there and there. I just kind of work my way around, bending this carcass, this box carcass, to the bottom panel, which is square. Now I can just perfect this front. And there we have the basically the carcass of this. All I need to do now is take some, these are just 1 1/4 inch wood screws. And I'm just going to secure this cabinet together. All right, this is all screwed together. It's nice and sturdy now. I do have a bit of a lip here on this bottom panel, so it's a good time to get a little practice with your flush trim bit. I've got the bearing on the bottom, and trim off this little lip here. All right, so I made a bit of a mistake here. I was focused so much on creating this video and shooting this video that I put the bottom on the top. And the only reason it is the top is because it has pocket holes here in the bottom for the where we were supposed to put in the top. Now we are going to have rails here, and we're going to have a bit of trim that covers up in the front. So realistically, you probably never see that, but I'm not in love with it, so I'm going to take it off and put it where it belongs. Okay, not a big deal. I'm just going to push it out. Just going to bend these brad nails back and forth until they just break off. They are just wire. Okay, I'm going to switch back to my pin nailer. I'm going to use a different pin nailer. This one's a little smaller. And my 1 inch pin nails. Because now what we're going to do is we're going to install the rails to the inside of the cabinet, okay? And we're going to do this the exact same way we did it before. We're going to put one in as a spacer here, and then it is the next one we'll glue in. We're going to use our spacer, just like we did on the center divider, to line the inside of these two sides with rails. Okay, I have all the rails installed in the cabinet carcass, and then we have all the rails obviously installed in our center divider, which is going to go here. Now, for the most part, the meat and potatoes of this thing is done. I'm not going to install this center divider yet. I'm going to stain, pre-finish the inside of this cabinet, and I'm going to pre-finish this center divider before I put it in, because once it's in, staining it becomes quite the effort, just because there's so little space inside. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a foam brush. I'll come out, I'll stain the inside, all surfaces on both sides of the divider, and then we can put it together. Okay, so I've got the center divider and the inside of the carcass stained, and I'm just going to let that dry, and then we can install the center panel or the center divider inside the cabinet. All right, so I have the carcass built or stained, and that's all dry. I did forget to do one thing, which I'm guilty of a lot, I forgot to drill the pocket holes in the back of the divider. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill those now, and luckily this Craig 520 fits right in between these rails for the bottles, and I know this from experience. So we'll drill those real quick. Okay, now to put this in, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, I've drilled my pocket holes in this side, which means that when I screw it in, it's going to want to when I screw it in from this way, it's going to want to push this, this divider towards me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my spacer, and I'll slide it into this bottom rail here until it butts up against there. I'll just double check my spacing. Looks pretty good. And I'm going to go ahead and drill that or screw that in. So this is kind of the end of the carcass. From here, I'm going to start trimming this out. I do want to say that you can trim this out a number of ways, any way you want to, really. I'm going to do a shaker style. This customer has, I generally will put an arched footing all the way around these, but this customer has requested that this be a flat bottom so that they can put coasters on here. So what I'm going to do in this particular instance is I'm going to put another piece of 3/4 ply on the base here so that I have a nice good area to attach my trim or what will be my face frame here. Okay, but this is basically the end of building the carcass. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start trimming out or start milling down some lumber for trim. The trim I'm going to make for this, I'm going to do the sides here in kind of a boulder 2 1/4 inch, 3/4 inch thick poplar, or I'm sorry, pine, is what we're going to trim this in, furniture grade pine. We're going to trim that 2 1/4 inches there, and then the front we're going to go with a little bit of a more slender profile. To make up for the 3/4 of an inch worth of trim on the side here, we're going to do 1 1/2 inch stiles on the front with a 3/4 inch stile in the middle, and then we're going to do the same thing on the top, 1 1/2 inch rails on top and bottom. The other side, of course, will get the matching 2 1/4 inch trim from the other side. As always, when I'm trimming out furniture like this, I always like to start from the back corner, one of the back corners. I'll apply a liberal amount of glue here. Just as a personal preference, I like to kind of smash it on here and then wiggle it around a bit to make sure we get good contact everywhere. And I'm just using some pin nails here. And we'll attach this trim The nice thing I like about pin nails is that once you sand, you can't even see them. All right, so I've got that back corner done. Now I'm going to do this front corner here. I'm going to flush this up with the front of my carcass. Just like so. Do the same down here. I'm going to try and get these as perfectly flush as you can. Once I've got one side trimmed, I'm going to trim the other side, again starting at the back corner. I go ahead and cut through sections of lumber that have knots because I know that I can use them later, even though I can't use that whole length. When you're marking these from the bottom, it helps if you hang it over your workbench a little. Mark that as the bottom, top. You always want to check kind of the back side of your trim before you glue it on. Just wipe it with your finger there on that leading edge. That'll help prevent any glue from squeezing out. All right, so for the top, I want a little more meat to nail to or to fasten to than just this one piece of 3/4 inch on the divider for the top rail. So I'm gonna make myself just some very small stringers that will go here in the top out of some 3/4 ply. And I'm gonna do that, I'm just gonna use my spacer as a spacer on my table saw, and I'll cut 2 squares this size. All right, so I've just cut some very small stringers that match the dimensions of my spacer. And I'm just gonna put them in with these pocket holes. Go ahead and flush them up. I'm gonna stagger those pocket holes so they don't interfere with each other on each side. There is, by the way, a million different ways to skin this cat here. This is just what I'm doing. The widths of my face frame don't really lend itself very well to pocket holes to assemble the face frame, which I could have done had they been a little bigger. At the moment, I'm not real motivated to pull out my domino either to attach or to put that face frame together or a face frame assembly together. I just don't feel like dealing with that. So I'm just going to do this way. Go ahead and clamp those so they don't move. Okay, now we can go ahead and start putting together the front trim. This thing is pretty much all trimmed out. Again, usually when I make these, they have legs on them, legs, and curved bottoms for a more decorative look. Easy enough to do on your own. But that is basically this wine rack. This will be the top of the wine rack. I'm just using 3/4 inch ply. Again, I'm going to edge band it, sand it. It'll go here on the top. And it'll look just like that. The customer will put their own wheels on here. I'm going to go ahead and let this dry and then we'll sand it and stain it and it'll be ready. While that's drying, I'm just going to go ahead and edge band this top. And for those of you who follow my channel, you know that I own an automatic edge bander or semi-automatic edge bander. I'm not going to fire that up just for this. It's just as easy to do it by hand than wait for that thing to heat up. So all I'm going to do is I'm using this pre-glued edge banding. You can get this at your local hardware store, your local big box tool store. It's usually over in the lumber department where they have kind of the ornamental cornices and other type of ornamental wood pieces. I've got the iron set on the very highest setting. And I'm just going to go over this. I go over it until when I put my finger on here, I can only hold it there for, maybe half a second. And then I know I'm kind of hot enough. Then I'll take a block and I'll just apply pressure all the way down this edge banding to make sure I get a nice seal. I'll also run the block kind of at an angle here to make sure that those edges are making nice contact. Not going to do anything with that right now. I'm going to flip it over, let that other side cool. Usually this just snaps right off, but it's a little humid here right now. But if you're quick about it, usually that'll just snap right off. I'm going to do this opposite side, same way. You've got to get that glue underneath really warm, and even to some extent the plywood panel that's underneath the glue. So this top part here of the edge banding needs to be really pretty hot. Like I said, again, where you can't even hold your finger there for very long. And that's there. Again, I'm going to go over and rub this with this flat block. Go over the edges as well. By that time, my other side should be pretty cool. If you're in real hot climate, you'll want to let that cool a little bit longer. It's still a little warm. I'm going to run my edge banding trimmer down through here. You can get edge banding trimmers at your local big box store in the same place that they sell the edge banding, but those are not real good ones in my experience. This one I got off of Amazon. It wasn't very expensive. If I think about it, I'll put the link to it. It's by far my favorite edge banding trimmer. Never fails, never mars the plywood. It's really a great, just handheld trimmer. All right, I'm going to touch up those edges or the overlap here with my. If there's even the tiniest bit of overlap there, this edge banding will come off. All right, now I'll go ahead and do the other side. All right, that is done. I'll go ahead and sand this whole thing. Once that's done, I do like to just kind of kiss the edges here with a little bit of 220, just to kind of round off that edge. Just a tiny bit, just like you were easing a sharp edge on something. That's all I'm doing. That's going to allow my clear coat to cover that corner better, because corners do not take paint or clear coat or anything else very well. So I'm just going to ease that just a little bit. Make it slightly less sharp. I can feel a little overhang here. And there we go. There's our top, nice and edge banded. That'll go right on top of that. Just like that. And it'll attach with the pocket holes that we drilled in the very beginning. All right, this has had enough time for the glue to dry that it's stable enough that I can sand it. I do have some very small gaps in my trim, which is going to be part of the reason why I'll be sanding this. But really, it's just to give it just a perfectly flat, perfectly smooth finish on it. I'm going to do something that the internet is going to yell at me for, undoubtedly. I'm going to do what we call around here glue sanding. You'll hear people call it different things. Basically, it's a way to make your own wood putty with glue and dust, sawdust or sanding dust. And so all I'm going to do is I'm going to run a bead of glue down this seam. And you're probably thinking, oh my God, you're going to stain this and you're putting glue all over the face of this wood here. You're right, I am putting glue all over the face of this wood here, and normally, under any other circumstances, that would be a problem for staining purposes, but we are going to, or I am going to, really kind of aggressively sand this. I do run all my trim just a little thick, because I know that I'm going to really aggressively sand these things when the time comes. So all I'm doing is I'm rubbing this sawdust, which is just the same, it's sawdust, the same pine sawdust from all my other projects. I'm going to rub that into those cracks and the other imperfections. And then I'm going to use my DeWalt rotary sander here. If you don't have this sander, or you never use this sander, it's a little tricky. It requires a little bit of finesse, but power-wise, you cannot beat it. It hogs off material like nobody's business. But it is so powerful, and it is not a random orbital sander, it's just a rotary sander. So you can, if you don't get the hang of this, you can really dig into your piece rather quickly. I have this, if you haven't seen the video, I have this set up described. This hose, the automatic switch that turns on my vacuum when I start this, it's all in another video, so I won't go on about that. But I'm just going to go ahead and sand this. You'll see how fast this goes with this really powerful sander. I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to ease my edges on this side so that we don't hurt anybody. And again, it'll help our clear coat kind of make full coverage on here. Just using 220 to sand, just ease these sharp edges. Not using a lot of force, just going over a few times to give it not even a round over, just a smooth feel. And you know you're done when you can take your just bare hands and run this all along this trim here without any fear of being nervous about getting a splinter. That's when you know you're done. I'll get this. All right, now I'm just going to sand the other two sides the exact same way. All right, here we have it. Nice and smooth. All my seams are beautifully filled. It's not that I don't like using wood filler. I mean, obviously I have wood filler, but for these, when I'm going to stain them, I just really prefer that, you know, as we call it here, I don't know what they call it out there, that glue sanding method, because it just creates these really beautiful joints, and they don't crack like wood filler can. Once that glue is in there, they're pretty much permanent. And we are ready to stain this guy. Well, that's basically it. This is the finished unit. I will wait for this to dry. Tomorrow I will go ahead and clear coat it. I'm going to be using a polyacrylic warm gloss for this. No need for me to use any polyurethane for this particular piece. I don't have any wine bottles for you to see what this looks like because I quit drinking, but here is a spray paint can to give you kind of an idea of how those would go in there. I will put plans up on my digital store on Etsy for this, which will have detailed plans, but that is if you want like a step-by-step how to do it. Otherwise, I'll go ahead and I'll put the dimensions, when I get around to it, I'll put the dimensions in the description for the video for all the panels and such. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If I missed anything, put it in the comments. Likewise, if you hate something about this video, put it in the comments. Like I have to tell you that, you'll do it anyway. But go ahead, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.